If you ever feel like life's happening too fast and you've got no time to cry, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of No Time to Cry. I hope you're all having an amazing week, and I hope you're looking forward to the weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the other episodes that we've released in the last couple of weeks. I know it was half term last week, so I'm sure a couple of people need to have a little bit of a catch up, but it's all fun and games, and I like sharing the content, and I'm going to try and continue sharing some content for other episodes throughout the other weeks as well, because I know not everybody watches them exactly when they come out. So that's something new I'll be trying, so keep an eye out. Whilst you're at it, make sure you're subscribing, you're following us on our social media, whether that be Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok. We're across them all. So get your follow buttons out. I'm put on my personal story, like, not a little dig, but we get a lot of views on our posts. I say we, it's literally me, and then with some help from bloody Paula, bless her. And I would love it if you guys all just like followed us who reviewed the posts, because that would be great. But again, I've had a couple of people reach out this week that are new to the pod, so welcome. Join the chaos. So this week, the topic we're talking about is boundaries and the importance of them, the difference they can make on your life, how difficult they can sometimes be to implement. And that's definitely something I've been working on for a long time since I've been in therapy, and trying to work out. I've always come across as someone very, very strong minded. So even when I'm talking about this topic, I just had to cut it and kind of start again in terms of the topic, because I started talking, and when I was talking I was thinking, you're trying absolute crap, Shannon, because I was saying, I've always known what I've wanted, I've always done what I've wanted. That's not true. I'm a huge people pleaser. I just don't necessarily present in a people pleaser way, in that I am outspoken about things I really care about. I do have opinions on stuff. I've always been like that, always. I have never really been one to shy away from, if I've got a very strong opinion on something, not saying it. There's definitely been times in my life where I haven't, and certain individuals maybe that's not true with. But in general, I think most people that know me would say, oh yeah, Shannon takes no shit. Like, she wouldn't do something she wouldn't want to do. When actually, I think that's probably a bit of a shield that I put up, because most things that I do are driven by, or should I say previously, have been driven by keeping other people happy, or supporting other people, or making sure that everybody is okay, or everybody is safe, or everybody is looked after. I think that's just always been my mindset, but I'm not sure it's always been an active choice. I think it's something that's been built into me because of the experiences that I had growing up. So certainly around my dad, and I think I've spoke to this on some other episodes before, but obviously that was a long time ago now, so I'm happy to touch back on base with them, is that I had to put some really strong boundaries in place. And that is where my therapy journey with boundaries started. And then I've tried to continue that through my life in the last few years. It hasn't been the easiest journey, I'll be honest. Sometimes it involves difficult conversations. Sometimes it involves maybe advocating for yourself in such a way that makes other people feel a little bit uncomfortable. But we'll come back to that in terms of what you're responsible for and what you're not. But it's also a journey. I don't think you can ever say, oh, I've got them down, like I know how to set a boundary and I'm perfect at it, because I think there's a lot of nuances in terms of relationships and people that you're probably more likely to go back on those boundaries, or, set them but never hold to them. And that's certainly something that I've been working on in terms of making sure across all of my life, I'm kind of checking in and going, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing it because it makes other people feel bad, or someone would really want me to do it, or it's a difficult conversation. And I do think there is a balance to that. It's give and take. Sometimes you do have to do stuff in life that, you'd rather not do. But if something is going to impact your mental health, your well-being, it's going to trigger you in some kind of way, then I don't think you should be doing that. And that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, I wanted to touch on, to begin with, the mental load of, like, almost like, I don't know if you've heard this before, like the nice girl tax or the nice person tax, which is always saying yes and sort of being so selfless that there's a cost to yourself. And I think we as a society, and maybe, I don't want to talk about this just from a woman's perspective, but obviously I'm a woman, so it makes it easier for me, is that I have had a habit of saying a lot, certainly from a career perspective, is never saying no, always saying yes, 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 I'll take that on, I'll take that on, because I've always wanted to be the hardest working person in the room. And there is definitely some benefits to that in terms of career growth, but there is also some other sides to it where actually that's how you get closer to burnout. That's how sometimes people end up taking advantage of you. You end up becoming almost like the bloody donkey that carries all of the work that no one else wants to do. And I think you've got to be careful in terms of that tax of what saying yes when you mean no gives to you in terms of a load. And you get that in your personal life as well, right? If you're always the friend that's going that extra mile, driving this place, doing that place, if you're in the relationship and you're basically carrying it and you're always the one going, oh no, yeah, I'll do that, or eating in restaurants you don't really want to eat in, going to places you don't really want to do, you're not getting as much out of that relationship as the other person is because you're always the one that's giving something up, that will pick away at you over time. And there will come a point that not having any boundaries in place in any of your relationships ends up spiraling into sometimes a question around self-worth. You know, are you doing all of those things because you don't think you're deserving of being able to have that opinion and for someone to follow what you want to do for a change, or how you want to run your life or do stuff or spend your time? But also there becomes some resentment against that over time possibly as well. So it's sort of like, and again, I come back to this tax. By saying yes all the time, people might think you're a really good person, but what are you giving up in replacement of that? So it's like, oh, great, people think you're a great person, but actually your mental load is so heavy, you can barely function when you're meeting up with all of these people and doing everything that everybody else wants to do and not taking those breaks. And I can get into habit of this. I've got some really great friends, and trying to squeeze everything in, especially around birthdays and kids' birthdays and my birthday, whatever, celebrations, going out, meeting up, trying to overload your weekend, your week to fit everything in because you don't want anyone to feel like you're neglecting them or you're not being a good friend or you haven't seen them in ages. That comes at the cost of maybe you having a rest and you needing a break, specifically if you work full time as well. Not giving yourself time to switch off and rest is, again, part of that tax and something that you give up when you don't necessarily have boundaries in place. I do think once you start putting boundaries in place, there is almost a tipping point where it feels like, oh, this is awkward, or this is a bit of a luxury. I've got a little bit of time back, or, I'm doing something that I enjoy for once, or that person's not talking to me in that way anymore. And then it just, once you continuously do it and work on it, and I do say work on it because I don't think there ever comes a point where you're perfect at it, where it becomes, it has to be there. And that's sort of where I'm at now in terms of there's certain things and boundaries that I've put in place that I will not give up. And that's because I know the difference they make to my life. And it's no longer a luxury to have that boundary there. It's a must. It has to be there because that allows me to function, that allows me to be a nicer person. It allows me to decompress, to look after myself. And, there's that age old saying, you can't fill somebody else's cup up when yours is, near empty or half full itself. It's trying to make sure that positively prioritizing yourself, your wants, your needs, what you want and love in life will eventually benefit everybody else as well because of the kind of person that you become. And if there's people that don't like the version of you with boundaries in place, I actually think that's a reflection on them and not you, because the likelihood is if you've put a boundary in place that is to look after your well-being and now that person doesn't like that, it's probably because it doesn't suit their wants or needs for you to look after your well-being in such a way. So I would say that says more about them than it does you. So you putting a boundary in place, for argument's sake, let's just say you have a partner and you don't live together and we're used to seeing them every single day of the week or at least 5 or 6 days of the week. And you've decided now you want to start going to the gym because you want to look after yourself. You've decided to take up a hobby because, again, your mental well-being, you feel like you need to be stimulated in some kind of way. And maybe there's a third night of that week where you've decided, actually, I just want to rest. I want quiet. I want peace. If you're someone like me, I am what they call an extroverted introvert. I outwardly appear to be extroverted, but actually I need time to reset. I don't gain energy by spending time with other people. I like spending time with other people, but it does drain me. It takes a lot of energy out of me and I feel depleted after I've done it a lot of the time. So I need a couple of days to recover, whether that be a weekday, whether that be, a weekend where I just don't see anyone. I need that time. So let's say you've put those boundaries in place and you've decided, right, rather than seeing you 6 nights a week, I'm going to start seeing you 3 nights a week because I still want to spend time with you. We don't live together currently, but there's not enough hours in the day, right? I can't do all of my hobbies and all these things that are going to support my mental health and actually let me be a better partner because I'm not so reliant on that relationship. And maybe we'll do another episode on dependency and trying to make sure that you're living a life that isn't reliant and dependent on other people in such a way that you're almost emotionally attached, so you can't find happiness without them, or you can't think of anyone that you can't deal with any of your emotions on your own or any of your life on your own. I think that's a conversation we can loop back round to, but it definitely comes, boundaries is part of that. And then you've put this boundary in place and you've said, right, I'm going to let's work out a timetable of when we're going to see each other because I want to start doing this and this is in the evening. I want to start cooking more. You can actually be part of that. You can come round. I'd love to cook for you. I want to do this thing. I want to do that thing, which means that I've only got 3 or 4 evenings a week. And I want to dedicate those 3 or 4 evenings a week to you because I still want to see you and I still want to spend time, but I can't do 6 nights a week anymore. If that person, and initially they might go, oh, okay, so you don't want to spend as much time with me, but a partner that understands you, understands your mental well-being, what you might need to be better or what you might need to improve, especially if you're communicating well. And communication is the biggest thing in life. Like, cannot talk to that enough in terms of how important communicating to your friends, your partner, specifically if you're putting boundaries in place. And this is people that you've had long-term relationships with, who some people would say you don't owe people an explanation, but actually if you've spent a long time doing a certain type of thing, I think the best way to do it is communicate why that change needs to happen in a really clear way that doesn't, it's not you making excuses as to why you have to prioritize yourself, but it is you kind of explaining why you want to make those changes and the benefits to you and that person if you do so. If that person then decides to go, almost like a victim mentality. You don't want to spend time with me anymore. You would rather do this. I preferred it when you wanted to dedicate all your time to me. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't want you to do that hobby. I don't want you to do this. I don't like the idea of you going to the gym so much. Is that because you're going to cheat on me? Or is that because you think that all these sort of unhealthy, toxic kind of conversations that come up? This is where you have to have a look and say, yes, setting a boundary is hard. Sometimes it brings difficult conversations. It's not a nice conversation to have. Actually, I don't want to see you every day of the week anymore, even though you might still love that person, whatever it is. But there's reasons and priorities that you want to set. And if you don't do that, what's the cost to you? So if you're deciding, okay, I'm not going to do that now, maybe there's a compromise somewhere in between. But if you've decided, right, I'm just going to go back, this is too much. I don't want to cause any drama. I don't want to cause any arguments. I don't want this to be a difficult conversation. I'm just not going to go to the gym. I'm not going to take up that hobby. I'm not going to do this. And I'll just see you those 6 nights a week. There will be this little voice in the back of your head in terms of that resentment, especially if your mind is not good, your value in yourself is not good, you're trying to rebuild something that maybe you feel like you've lost yourself a little bit. You can't let that negative conversation dictate how you're going to run your life and put those boundaries in place. And that's something that I really, really, really found hard to begin with. I started off with like I said, my boundaries with my dad. That was really fucking hard because my dad was used to me being someone that would pick the phone up no matter the hour. 4 o'clock in the morning, I've picked up the phone. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in work, I'll pick up the phone. Do this, do that. Can you do this for me? Can you do that? Can you send me this money? Can you do that? Yes, yeah, of course. Also, the person that would tell them when they've done something wrong, that person that they could lean on and offload onto and tell you all of their bad behaviors, and they knew that you wouldn't really judge them and you'd always accept them back, but also you were that voice that would go, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that, how would you feel? And I had to put boundaries in place because my own mental health was in tatters at that time. I was completely depleted. I had poured every single ounce of myself into my relationship with my dad because he was so poorly at that time. Very, very poorly. And initially, those boundaries started off smaller. Give me a week, Dad. Just give me a week. I'm struggling a little bit with my mental health. Give me a little bit of space. Again, he struggled with that. So I had to keep reinforcing this boundary. Dad, I've asked you for a week. Please, just let me have a week. I need to get my head back in a good place. This has been a lot, and there were some incidents that had happened around the time, and, I won't get into all of it now. And my therapist at the time was great for me because she kept reassuring me and reaffirming to me what happens if I don't hold that boundary. This is the first time I've ever put a boundary in place with my dad. Otherwise, I had been a free for all. I'd just taken it on, I'll save the day, I'll do this. And really, I wasn't saving anything because none of the behaviors were changing, right? I was just taking more and more on. This is the first boundary you've put in place. If you don't hold it now, this kind of shows that it's easy to get around that, and if there's enough pressure, you'll back down. So when you try and put some bigger boundaries in place in the future, whether that be about things you're happy to talk about, things you're not happy to talk about, things that trigger you that you'd rather your dad not do, if you fall back on just asking for a week, kiss it all goodbye, because it's like that moment of weakness. And when someone is perhaps not wanting you to put that boundary in place for their own personal gain, you've got to be able to stand strong and stand firm on it. And that's why I'll always advocate for therapy, because that voice is so easy, especially if you've got some really big emotional attachments in terms of that person that you're putting boundaries in with. It's difficult to hold on that. And there's different levels to boundaries, right? And we'll come on some looser ones. But if this is the first time you're looking at relationships, your family, your friends, your partner, maybe it's work, maybe it's your career, and the boundaries you put in there, some of these are going to be big, some of these are going to be difficult. And I would always say start small and then up it. So for my dad, unfortunately, because he was really struggling with even the smallest boundaries, actually what ended up happening is I had to put some stronger boundaries in place because it wasn't working. He was really challenging those smaller boundaries. And I would love to say, do you know what? He's my dad. Fuck it. I'll just answer the calls no matter what hour. But when I tell you guys, I had nothing. I had nothing. I was a shell of a person. If I didn't put these boundaries in place, I wouldn't have been able to help anybody, let alone myself. I was really, really depleted in terms of my mental health. And I spoke to it on a previous episode where I spoke about how I got into therapy, and Jamie coming home one day and literally me being laid in the bath, just like tears running down my face, and him sitting on the edge of the bath or in the bathroom just saying, you can't do this anymore, Shannon, like you can't. And that was a build up over time. Things had got, I tried to get my dad into into rehab. He wouldn't go. Chaos, guys, chaos. So I waited, unfortunately, until there was an utter need for me to put a boundary in place, like my own well-being and headspace. And I probably would have had a mental breakdown, if I'm honest, if I hadn't, because it was just verging on that in terms of I have nothing left, like whether that be in my relationships, my friendships, my work. Everything was all surrounded around trying to help someone that wasn't ready to get help. So I think the reason I've spoke about that is because I don't want you guys to get to a point in life where boundaries are something like. I don't want you to get to a similar point as me. I'm not saying, all of your parents are going to go down that route and that's the experiences. But if you don't start small and don't start putting boundaries in place sooner rather than later, I would hate for you all to experience what I did, where it becomes a necessity and then you've got to make some big changes in your life really quickly, because otherwise you're fucked, like, to put it lightly. So I think there is a misconception around putting a boundary in place and almost being like a bit of a diva or a bit rude, or, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to. It's a boundary I've put in place. That isn't, I think it all depends on your character, right? That isn't what it has to look like. So for me, some boundaries that I've put in place recently around work have been around meetings. So we're going complete polar and opposite end of the scale, guys. We've gone heavy with the dad. Now we're going light in terms of like teams meetings in work. But this is what I'm saying. There's ends of the spectrum here. So let's talk about the kind of differences. So before Christmas, I had some really, really big projects in work going on. And when I tell you I was having 8, 9, sometimes 10 Teams calls a day, and I'm not talking people calling me, I'm talking back to back every single minute of the day, not even a 5-minute break for a wee and a drink. It was too much. And I was accepting those meetings, right? So that was one of my own kind of boundaries with myself that I needed to put in place. You don't have to accept every single call. You don't have to accept every single meeting. And I was getting to that point where I was feeling really, really exhausted at the end of the day. I'm putting my laptop down, and I mean, let's be honest, I can talk for England, but I didn't have any words left. Like, my word count for the day was depleted by meeting 4. So a rule that I'd put in place for myself is that I was going to start arranging my diary in such a way that I would not accept more than 5 Teams calls a day. Now, for some people, that's still a lot. For me, that just allowed me time to pick up on the other bits in work that I needed to. It gave me the flexibility to accept the odd call or call the odd person that I needed to be able to get something done. And it also just gave me space outside of work for my brain to function in a way that I wasn't feeling exhausted all the time. And that's a rule that I had to put in place because, again, it's my own mental well-being. And what I wasn't doing was declining those meetings altogether. I was just rearranging my diary. So rather than it having to be on a Monday where I've already got 5 meetings booked in, unless it's urgent, which in that case, maybe I'll move one of my other meetings out, we're doing it on Tuesday or we're doing it on Wednesday or we're doing it another day. And I think what I found frustrating is obviously when you're working in such a busy place, everybody's trying to line everybody's diaries up. So I was getting to a point where I'd have like 10 meetings on one day, but then on a Thursday, I might only have 4. So it's like we don't have to cram everything in, and you don't have to accept, you don't have to say yes. And I find that really hard because I'm like, well, they've obviously booked it in for that time specifically, but then you're prioritizing somebody else's need to have a conversation with you over your exhaustion, if I'm being completely open. So that's something that I've put in place that I've stuck by because it's important for me, and it's better for those around me. One, because if something important does pop up, trying to rearrange a diary of 9 to 10 meetings a day, insane, right? Like insane. Also, there's things that are going in, you get into a meeting and you think, I don't even need to be here. So I just started to readdress and have a look at meetings and go, who's on this meeting? What's the topic? Do I need to attend this? Realistically, what's going to happen if I'm not there? Is there someone that can take notes for me and, and can just share their notes? Is there someone that I'm in another meeting with? Are there 2 people with similar expertise on there that we both don't need to be present? So I just tried to look at it, and I didn't announce that. No one's questioned me on it. No one said, why have you stopped accepting every single meeting? Because I think it was in my own head that the expectation was that I have to say yes to everything. I don't have to do that, guys. I don't know if someone's going to tell me, but you don't have to do that. No one's forcing you to. You have control over your own kind of destiny in terms of those. And maybe that's a privilege talking there, actually. Not everybody has control over their diaries, but for my role and the type of role that I do, I actually do. So I don't know why I was letting it happen like that, and why I was being late to meetings because I'm jumping off another one straight onto another that's run over. People are going, oh, can I put time with you on Thursday? No, you can't, because I'm rammed. Like, if you can find space in my diary, that's the wrong way to look at it. So those are like polar opposite end of the scales in terms of boundaries. But I think what I'm saying is there's a way to do it without being rude. One, I didn't need to announce it because I just gave myself a bit of a check and was like, Shannon, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself in such a way? And I maybe did it as a bit of a test to kind of go, I'm just going to start declining stuff or recommending a new time and see if people accept it or see what comes back. And literally, when I tell you no one had an issue, I was like, why have I been doing this for the last like 4 or 5 months? Where I've literally been trying to cram like a month's worth of work into a week, because then tell you what, the week after someone else is expecting you to do another month's worth of work. Like, you've just got to be able to get that balance right. And I think adulthood, a career, home life, hobbies, like, again, all of this stuff that I spoke about in the vision board episode, it is a balancing act. And I do think you have to be in a position where you care about your well-being and yourself, because otherwise you'll never stand strong on a boundary. If you are doing it because you kind of think that's what you should be doing, but you don't really believe in it, or you don't really feel strongly about it, should it be a boundary in the first place? I don't know. You've got to really believe it, because there will be times where you're going to feel challenged by it. And that people pleaser in me, in terms of certainly in career, being able to go, I can do everything. I can do everything. I can do everything. Give me a challenge, I'll smash it. I had to challenge that within myself, because that isn't a normal expectation for people to have. And I also think you end up setting a bar of expectation that then people kind of hold you against. And it's not a fair reflection, because you're doing 10 times the amount of work that others are doing, and you're being held to a higher standard because you've always done it. Like, you've got to get that. And that kind of, when it comes into people questioning your boundaries and equity in work, and having that fair approach, is saying, well, just because I've always done it doesn't mean that I should be held and compared differently to others, because actually I was doing all of those things because I wasn't prioritizing my mental health and my mental well-being, which in some ways is a gain to the business, but only for short term. Because if I end up burning myself out and going off of work, then that's a loss to you and a loss to me. So you've got to think about it in a wider picture, rather than just that, oh God, that's a really tricky thing to do. I don't want to have an awkward conversation. As long as you're doing things with a reason behind it and you feel strongly about it, it's just working on your communication skills in terms of how you have that conversation. And I do think for people that struggle with those initial conversations, one, having a level-headed friend to bounce things off, or a level-headed colleague, is great. And let's just say friend because of outside of work as well, but also, in work, you can still talk to your friends about what's going on in work. My approach is always, I want to have a boundary, but I want to do it in such a way that I'm mindful of other people's feelings without giving up what I want to. And that's how I found it best to work for me, is that it's allowed me to put boundaries in place that are respecting my wants and needs. I'm not giving anything up. I'm not being rude or being not selfish, because I think looking after yourself isn't selfish and prioritizing your own wants and needs. But I do think there's a way of vocalizing things and communicating things in such a way where people are more understanding, more empathetic or sympathetic, whatever, to what you're asking for. And that just because you've been able to explain what you're doing or why you feel a certain way. So again, I know some people would rather just say, well, I don't need to explain myself. And sometimes I have that approach if I don't have a great relationship with someone. If I've known you 5 minutes, I don't need to explain why I've declined your meeting or whatever. But if I've had a meeting in place with you for 2 years and I've attended it every single time, if I start not turning up to that, I want you to understand why that is and what I'm doing around my diary. Or if we've had a coffee date booked in for every 2 weeks on a Sunday, but a lot of that time I'm giving something up that I really care about to be able to do it, because I care about you also. If I'm changing that schedule or I'm changing something, I do feel like I want to explain that. So maybe that's just me and my brain and how that works, but it's meant that boundaries have worked better for me, albeit with my dad not so much. But there was obviously mental health and addiction wrapped into that, in terms of his own mindset and his own headspace where it didn't work so well. And I think that again kind of takes me back to a point where I'm saying, if you have explained your boundaries and why you need them, and someone cannot respect that is a reflection on them and not you. And you are only in control of your own thoughts and emotions, the conversations, how you communicate stuff. If you have done that in such a way and that person still has a problem, then you need those boundaries, because that person is trying to get something out of your relationship more than kind of honest love and friendship. It's a gain to them. They're trying to gain something beyond that, at the cost of you. So sometimes boundaries can really highlight toxic relationships or friendships. If you are constantly the friend that is reaching out and you never ever hear back from your friend if you don't message, then, and you put a boundary in place that says, I'm not going to text them every day because I don't, mentally, I just don't have the time at the minute or the space. I'm going to check in with them once a week. Maybe you still want to do that, right? Maybe you still want to put some effort in. You don't want to step away from it completely right now. That's fair. And then you literally do not hear from that friend until that one day of the week. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's just you and your friendship. We're talking too much. We don't need to talk as much, but maybe then it's a realization like, oh, shit, would we talk at all if I didn't message? Would we have any conversation if I wasn't messaging this person all the time? Am I carrying the load of that? Again, I think it's a conversation to have. I think it's like, how do you have those conversations around your friendship? I'm have got to a point now, and I'm going to talk about my TikTok of the week actually, and I'll always share the creator. Let me get it up. The TikTok of the week this week is from a creator called Maria and Tara, and I'll show their page if you're watching on YouTube. And it was a clip, and it says, POV, your people pleasing friend finally puts firm boundaries in place. And then it's like a clip from Breaking Bad where Jesse, I don't know if you guys have seen Breaking Bad, it's a belter series, by the way. It's like, whoa, hell yeah, man, come on, baby, come on. Like basically celebrating. And because I was the first friend in my group to go to therapy and obviously start putting boundaries in place, and me and my friends communicate really well around like our boundaries and stuff. Again, I think that's come on from me going to therapy and then explaining what I'm doing, communicating really well, communicating what I need to prioritize, and then pushing that onto my friends. I am always like, I think people think I'm a boundary queen. I'm not always the best at holding my boundaries, but I talk about them so much. Hence why I've done this episode, because I'm constantly saying to my friends, you've got to put a boundary in place. That is so unhealthy. You can't keep doing that. It's costing you this emotionally, financially, whatever, right? It's not fair. What difference is it making? You know, you're giving all of this up, but what are you gaining in return? Like it's not healthy. So when my friends come to me and say, I've put a boundary in place and I'm sticking to it, I'm like, hell yeah, man, come on, baby, let's go. Because it is something to celebrate, because it's not easy. I will say that putting boundaries in place is not easy, especially if it's not something that comes naturally to you. So when you start to take that turn, and I've got a friend really close to me, I'm not going to name them because I haven't asked if I can speak about them, right? Who has gone through a lot of changes in the last couple of years in terms of their relationship and all that sort of stuff, and questioning careers recently, and are they on the right track, and all those sort of stuff. And their personality, they've started therapy as well a couple of years ago, which is now like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. I used to ask them, do you want to come here at the weekend? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Previously, they'd just say yes, or they'd ignore like and be awkward about it. Whereas now it's like, do you know what? I'm really not feeling up to it. Can we put something in time on like a different day when my headspace is up? And rather than me sat there going, oh, well, you don't want to see me, or that's not nice, or whatever, I'm like, yes, we love a healthy boundary. If we're not feeling up to it, if we're cramming everything in a day, trying to make time, trying to make peace, unless the world's ending, guys, let's just rearrange for another day. You know, I have got so much better at that. You know, if people are like, oh, we want to go here, we want to go there. And I'll be honest, I don't often have to put boundaries in place because I am the friend that's like up for anything. Paula said that to me the other week. She's like, you're the friend that does it all. Bottomless brunch? Yes, I'm doing one this weekend. Going to a spiritualist church? Yes. Do you want to come pottery painting? Yes. Do you want to climb this mountain? Yes. Do you want to go on holiday? Yeah, I do actually. Do you want to come to garden centre with me? Yes. Do you want to take my kid to soft play with me? Yeah, of course, no bother. And that's not because I'm just people pleasing. I'm just always up for anything. And Jamie and I have got a really good relationship. And I remember his family commenting on me always doing stuff and going out and being places and stuff like that. Because it's different, right? Over years, like relationships change in terms of, you know, in different decades or whatever. And I've always been the one thing I love about, not the one thing. One of the things I love about Jamie and mine and our relationship is that I don't have to ask permission. You know, we don't always know where each other are. I don't give up my friendships in terms of things that I do. I've got a life outside of my relationship as well as in. I can do everything with Jamie, right? He's one of my best friends. We can go shopping. We can do this. We can do that. He won't come to the gym with me, sad. But other than that, you know, we could do everything together, but we don't. We have good friendships where we go and do stuff. We'll go to dinner with other people and then come back and talk about it. And we've got a separate life outside of our relationship together. And that, I think, is what makes us so strong in so many ways, is that we're not reliant on each other. And I clipped up one of the things I said in last week's episode around kind of your friends being your soulmates and finding those people, because I don't think that you can expect one person in your life to offer you everything you want from life. He offers me a massive amount of it, but I don't need him to do those things. And I've always said, like, a boundary for me is, certainly in a relationship, is one that I've kept my own identity, because certainly when I was a teenager in those early years of relationships, I lost myself and kind of just completely became about that person. Two, you know, I do things with people that I think I'm going to enjoy it the most. Like, would Jamie come pottery painting with me? Yeah, probably. Would I enjoy it more if I went pottery painting with Paula or Laura or Nick or whatever? Probably, yeah, because they would enjoy it more. So why would I ask him to come along and do it if I know I'm going to have a better time with my friends? I think that's the way we do things. And I like, there's things he does with his friends that we don't do together. But also there would be no issue if I decided to come along or he decided to come along. So it's just kind of finding those, certainly in a relationship, those boundaries that kind of make sense, but then also celebrating when you do have those boundaries in place. Like, Jamie and I have found our boundaries probably going in different levels now as we've got older, and we're getting better at setting them, certainly around language and things that we say, and kind of communicating better in terms of when you say certain things, how that makes someone feel. And sometimes it can be flippant, right? But I think it's really important to, like, not just set a couple of boundaries and then go, right, cool, we're done. Because relationships, whether they be friendships, romantic, whatever, they are ever changing. So your boundaries should be ever changing. Something that was a boundary for you previously might not be a boundary anymore. You might be happy with where that's at, and you don't need to hold strong on it. But there might be something else that develops, or the way that you feel in certain ways, that now you need to implement something else. So it might be, oh, I don't like that turn of phrase when you say that. It makes me feel like this. Again, a boundary is raising it. Doesn't necessarily be don't ever say that, or I'm expecting you to never say that ever again. I would expect you to respect it and listen to it. And if I bring it up again, for you to apologize and say, oh, I understand that. But, you know, it's having that balance in act. And I think where I started setting the boundaries, Jamie's got so good at them now. And I'm someone who, like we say, can natter. Sometimes my vocabulary is not the best. So I will say things and he'll be like, oh, came across a bit rude, Shannon, how you said that. I'm happy to be corrected. So I think there's something in setting boundaries, but also being accepting of them, and accepting kind of like that feedback and not taking it personally. And sometimes I can take things personally. I think it's how my brain receives kind of negative information, but I'm constantly working on how I receive that and thinking of it in a positive way, and not always feeling like I need to apologize or explain myself. Actually just taking what someone said and going, I appreciate that, thank you for raising it to me. I'm going to make sure that I kind of consider that in the future, and I'm not promising I'll never say it in that way again, because it's not a conscious thing that I've said, but I'm definitely going to try and embed that and ingrain it and make sure it's not something that I do, you know, in the future to impact you in that way. It's just communication. Boundaries are just communication. That is it. So if you work on the communication side, it becomes a lot easier for those boundaries to be set. And like I said, my friends and I are very similar in the way that we approach things, and it does help that a lot of them have been in therapy now. I do think a massive part of therapy, certainly the style of therapy that I do, is becoming a better communicator, understanding how you feel about things, understanding how you communicate how you feel about those things, and then holding strong on the stuff that you feel strongly about. But also, I think if you've lost yourself along the way, and I've had a couple of friends, and obviously I've spoke earlier about a point where I lost myself, is sometimes you need boundaries in place to rediscover what your wants and needs are. So if I always say yes to doing something everybody else wants to do, and then you ask me, well, what do you enjoy doing? But it's been that long that I've put my own ideas forward and kind of said, I really want to do this. Would everybody come and do this thing with me? Then I lose that understanding of what I care and I enjoy in life because I'm always doing what other people want me to do. And then that comes a point that if those relationships end, you've got to completely rediscover yourself. Whereas, touch wood, well, I bloody hope so because we're about to get married, that Jamie and my relationship doesn't end. But if it did, I would be devastated, but not because I would have lost my whole personality or because I would have lost who I am, but because I would have lost that connection with him and the relationship that we have, not the entirety of me. And that's been a working thing for me because I think when we got together, I was quite young. And the first 5 years of our relationship, I probably wouldn't have vocalized as much how I was feeling about things. I wouldn't have voiced what I was finding difficult. I would have it's like the opposite of happy wife, happy life. I think I was probably you know, don't annoy your boyfriend. No arguments. I don't know. I was probably trying to find a play on words, but I was probably living in such a way where I was holding a lot in, and it took us kind of like a tipping point in terms of how do we change that? How do we maneuver around our relationship in a different way? But now I'm in such a place that I value our relationship even more. I love him more than ever. And I think that's because I can stand by my boundaries and I'm comfortable with them, which means that I get a lot out of my life that benefits to him. But also, he allows me to just be me. He doesn't question that. He doesn't question why I want to do stuff or why I've got a different hobby every other day of the week, or he empowers me to be the person that I want to be outside of our relationship as well as in it. So as much as again, God, I love a ramble, but I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that are accepting of you changing and standing in, or standing by what you believe in, but being open to seeing that change and develop and go on that journey with you, rather than questioning why you've decided all of a sudden that you want to prioritize yourself. No one should ever be questioning why you're prioritizing yourself. You're the only person you're responsible for is yourself. Even your children, you're only responsible for them up until a certain point. Then they become their own person. You're the only person from beginning to end that you are 100% responsible for. What you care about, what you stand by, what your morals are, what you want to achieve in life, not because other people want you to do something, but because you really want to do it and you really care about it. That's the only thing that you can stand by. So if somebody else is not supporting of that or is questioning that, then do you know what? Fuck them off. Because yes, it's always worth a conversation. And I think you should always, initially people can get defensive. So I think, like I say, communicate, have a conversation about it, have another conversation about it. But if someone doesn't want you to be the best version of yourself, whether that be a friend, a family member, a relationship, a co-worker, a boss, what the fuck are you doing surrounding yourself with that person? Because we should all be caring about and wanting everyone we around to be the best version of themselves and look after themselves, and we should be advising them to do that. Sometimes I'll say to people do you really want to do that? Are you that bothered about it? Why are you doing it? And that's maybe me just liking to play a devil's advocate a little bit, but trying to get people to think beyond, oh well, I want to do this because I want to do it. Do you? Or is it because your mum told you to do that when you were fucking 6 and now you've got it stuck in your head that you have to do that because your mum said it to you? Do you really want to do it? Oh, actually, maybe I don't. Okay, so what are we doing? Let's reprogram the brain a little bit. Let's think about things differently. So yeah, that kind of brings me onto the thought of the week. Look at me although I do chat utter bollocks, just in terms of rambling on, I feel like having segments of the week helps me keep on some form of track. But yeah, the thought of the week, and I wrote this down kind of on the back of everything that I knew I wanted to talk about today, albeit I don't plan what I'm going to say, guys. I set out topics, but then I just let my brain take me where it's going to take me. If saying no to someone else makes you feel guilty, you are actually just prioritizing their comfort over your own sanity, and you need to stop doing that. So that's the thought of the week. So have a think about that and how it makes you feel and how it sits with you. Like if you feel guilty about it, like, and that might be a reflection on you, by the way, not that person. That person might not feel bad or feel crappy about it. You just might have that kind of built into you in terms of that guilt, and they're happy to support you and you're still feeling guilty about it. You need to sort that out, spend some time and understand why you feel that way. Specifically, if they are being supportive, but you are still feeling guilty, there's something in that you need to sit and understand and try and fix if you want to be able to live a life where you're prioritizing your wants and needs. So thought of the week, it's a deep one. Have a think, see how it sits with you. I think I would love to hear you guys kind of taking like one tiny boundary that you put in place this week. And I feel like go back to the vision board episodes, because those objectives they are also boundaries and rules, and how you kind of, to allow you to get to where you want to need, what do you need to do? So I mentioned on that episode, like one of my objectives is to ask for help at least once a week, no matter what size it is, because I'm really bad at asking for help when I need it. So if I can build that into my daily or weekly life in terms of making sure that I'm asking for support, and it might just be something really, really small, or it might be something massive, then that becomes habitual and it becomes part of me. And then in general, I should become better at asking for help. So when I really need it, and maybe it's emotional help, which I struggle with, that it feels more natural to me because I've got used to asking for it in different ways. So let's commit tiny boundary this week. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And then I'd love to hear from you guys what your boundaries are going to be, especially for some of my friends who we've been talking about boundaries for years. Like, get moving, honeys. Get the ball rolling. Stop letting people take the fucking piss out of you. Which some of my friends need to hear that, by the way. Just saying. And that doesn't mean I'm talking about relationships. I think friendships can be one of the biggest conversations around setting boundaries, and some people taking the absolute fucking piss. Also siblings, family members, like doing everything for everyone, and your siblings sat there on their ass not doing anything. Like I've got a lot of friends where they take on so much responsibility within their family and no one else is picking up the pieces. But have they told anyone how they're feeling when they're doing it all? Because then it just becomes an expectation. You've got to put a boundary in place. You've got to explain it. You've got to communicate. And I'm not the queen of boundaries, guys, but I am someone that's been in therapy for like 5 years, and I get told to set boundaries and how to set them every couple of weeks. Yes, I fuck it up sometimes. I'm not the best at it always, but it is something that's ingrained in me now in terms of checking in with myself and saying, what do I want to do? Is this something I want to do? Yes or no? If I'm feeling uncertain about it, is it because I don't really want to do it? Which in that case, okay, I realize now I don't want to do it. How do I communicate that in the right way? How do I communicate that in a way that I'm comfortable with? And my therapist, you'll hear me talk about it so much, big up Sue, is great in saying to me, well, what would happen if you said it in that way? And then I would go, oh no, like that would make me feel like this person would react in this way. Okay, then let's come back and say, how else, what's another way that you can get that across without that happening? Well, I could do this, I could do that. Okay, let's go down that. Let's have a look. Let's kind of work out that path then, if that's a path you're more comfortable with. She doesn't constantly push me down the hardest, roughest route. You can do things in different ways and still get to the outcome that you want. There's a difficult path, there's a path in the middle, and then there's the easy one. The easy one's not always the right one to go down. Sometimes you need to open the conversation out a little bit more. But you don't always have to pick the tough, difficult conversations either. Sometimes you've got to think about the person that you're communicating with, the type of person they are, how they might try to manipulate the situation. We've all got people in our lives that are kind of big manipulators. You've got to be willing to work around that as well when you're kind of setting boundaries and stuff. And we can get into those kind of topics on another episode, because I am going to draw a line there. But I would love to hear what you guys think about that episode. I've certainly spoke about boundaries before, but I'll be honest, guys, I can't remember everything I said when Laura and I was recording the podcast. So there might be a little bit of repetition, but who knows? I might have some different opinions now. So, and I'm not expecting you guys to remember what I said back then either. So there might be a couple of topics we go back over, but I'm loving it. Love you guys. And I hope you're having a good time, a good start to the year. Reach out. You know, I love a natter, chat, message, call, whatever. And let me know what else you want to hear about. See you all soon.